look, in what a movie I just saw last night, one of the creepiest movies I've ever seen of Bird Box. So, Ken, we may use you to help us blend all this, because movies, televisions, and all that, Netflix, Hollywood, and what's real and what's not, but we're trying to figure all that out. So Tommy helps me blend, but he was working with negative entities, and you're working with more reality 3D of going into space as an astronaut and helping kids learn about the STEM program, science, technology, energy, and math. So, Tommy, you've got to realize we're going to be marketing and public relations for NASA and helping kids get educated, and Tommy loves all that too. So, folks, you'll just have to bear with us here while we blend all this, this weird stuff. So, Tommy and Ken, let's figure out how to blend. Tommy is very intelligent. He's died, like I have, Ken, out-of-body, near-death experiences several occasions. But Tommy's had UFO experiences too. So I guess, Ken, we'll just need you to help us talk, because I wanted to give you plenty of time tonight, but you just had this come up. So, Ken, why don't you ask Tommy? Talk, just Tommy make sure that Ken gets to talk. You heard him last night, right?
Okay.
So introduce each other to each other. Yeah, go ahead, Ken. Help me fix this.
Just a second. I've got to ask a question of you, TJ. Did you get the email I sent you on the information with regards to John Levine?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you talk about that?
Well, I've got all the same information I sent you, and
well, I don't know if we're allowed, because of all the names that were, mentioning that. Now, Tommy's been working with Carrie Cassidy. Have you been on Carrie's show?
I'm pretty sure I have. I know Carrie Cassidy, so we'll see there. Okay, back to what you originally were asking.
Let's mention Linda Moulton Howell, right? We'll mention Linda Moulton Howell, because I've got her up on the UFO Association. So maybe that's what we should do, Tommy, is try to blend in some of the people into the UFO Association. Ken, what I'm trying to do is bring people such as yourself, Tommy, me, all these people together, because the people I'm going to be giving a conference to, they don't know a lot of these people. Some of them they do. So I'm trying to figure out how to blend alienology, phenomenology, cosmology, epistemology, and people like the weird stuff too. So now back to you, Ken. However you can blend this together, and Linda, but I don't know, did you want to talk about the Levine story? Is that something you want to talk about or not?
Let's hold Levine for another episode, because all this information is coming flashing in within the last couple hours here. So,
wow, amazing. Okay. Well, is there anything that's from your mind last night that you'd like to start? Because we're going to, remember, you teach children in the schools in science, technology, engineering, and math. Why don't you tell us about a little bit about your Apollo, actually I'll say your background with engineering, and however you want to share that coming on for the show.
Let's talk about how did I wind up here where I am today, I guess. And, oh, wow. You have about 3 or 4 hours, I'd take, to get into there, but we can go a little short on that. In reality, I was one of the orphans of World War II. My dad was a bomber pilot and lost his life during World War II. And
Tommy,
I wound up with...
Okay, that's some kind of really...
No, that's not me.
Logs. Okay, all right. Ken, what is... Okay, there's some kind of really weird sound. Tom, I have to get that
sounds
set.
like a microphone,
is your mic
TJ.
set? It does.
That sounds like your mic.
Okay.
Sounds like your mic.
The problem? Did that
No, I was sitting still and I heard it.
Oh, because I had it on speaker, and I'm now on just the headphone. That'll work.
Okay, yeah, the speaker must have been picking up your hand. All right, now, because it'll show up on YouTube, I know when I'm listening, it's really, if we make any sound. Okay, let's start over. This is Ken Johnston, and he worked at NASA, and great astronaut training, and you can see him in all his equipment. and all of that in the 60s. And he worked with Grumman, and he has a lot of intelligence, and he's well respected in our community of astronauts and learning to train and all the stuff he had to do, a lot of hard stuff. And we really respect him, and he's helping us in the UFO Association and the ET community, which we're blending together, and we're doing our best to share levels tonight in the various planet anomalies and weird entities with Tommy Hawksblood, who's been a friend of mine for a long time. And Ken is one of my newer friends, but yet I probably had experiences with Ken 68 to 73, and we haven't even got there yet. So now, Ken, yes, I don't hear it anymore. So, Ken Johnston, take it away, and then Tommy will. Y'all can get into a conversation. Thank you so much. Okay, Ken,
Yeah.
thank you. Go ahead.
You bet, Theresa. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think you and I have kind of bumped around each other, maybe within the same meetings at some times during that period of time. But just a lot of people say, well, who are you? How'd you get to where you're at now? What's going on? And I was just going to say that I was one of these military orphans. My dad was a bomber pilot during World War II and lost his life there. And then my mother wound up marrying a Marine Corps captain that came back from Guadalcanal, and the infections he had, he lost his life within about 2 years. So it's been a whole case of stepdads, and they're passing on the kind of life that you wouldn't expect anyone to survive in many cases. But that made me, I'm looking at a picture of my dad sitting on top of my desk here, and that was my motivation, is to get into the military, go through military academy, and follow in the footsteps. And so I joined the Marine Corps. Well, actually, I was in college, the military school, and then summer school. My best friend came into the dorm and said, well, Ken, I joined the Marine Corps. And back then, when you're like 19 and you're smart and you know everything, I said, like, hell you are. You can't go without me. So I go down and enlist in the Marine Corps the next day with him, and we were on an airplane going. And I had applied for officer pilot training, and my friend Jack Lancaster didn't have that kind of motivation. He stayed in the Marine Corps as up through sergeant, and then after 4 years he got out. In my case, I went on off to Pensacola, Florida, where I learned to fly, and then I reverted back and finished up the last couple of years and got my civilian ratings. And at about the same time that the Apollo program was starting up. Now, my brother, Dr. A.R. Johnston, who's no longer with us, he was an engineer and was in charge of the vacuum chambers, the Cecil Space Environmental Simulation Laboratories. And when I was getting out of the Marine Corps, he says, you need to get your fanny down here. I like Buzz Aldrin, get your ass down here. And then I did, and I had offers from all the major aerospace companies. But I liked Grumman, because they built the Lunar Module, and they're the ones that were going to land on the moon. So I applied to them and the others, and you have to realize that back in those days, the John Kennedy, he was determined that we were going to land on the moon and get back safely before the Russians did. Now, what I know now, looking back on those days and realizing that we actually really did have and do have a secret space program, which I hopefully will get into perhaps on another night, here I was involved with testing the lunar modules, being sure everything worked well, and then help training the regular NASA Apollo astronauts so that they could fly the lunar module and land on the moon. All of those things were all part of my upbringing. And then after we finished our lunar missions, I wound up going back to work for the Boeing company in Seattle as a flight instructor, and 737 flight instructor is a little over 5,000 hours flight time. So those things kind of got me to the place where I was. Although, now, when we get a chance, TJ, I want to go back to talk about other people, too, how they may have had life-changing experiences when they were real young, and then periodically through their lives, maybe have had contact, either known or unbeknownst to themselves, with extraterrestrials. And that's kind of going to be an interesting subject that I'll look forward to. Now, Tommy, I think from what I just heard, both you and TJ and myself, we all have had direct contacts. A lot of this information I have kept in my pocket because of credibility, and my wife has always been concerned about, you don't want to talk about these woo-woo things that people don't understand, because I've got so much other actual proof and information and experience that we don't want to discredit the factual truths that I came forward to back in 1995, I guess, when Mr. Richard C. Hoagland took me to Washington, D.C., and we went public. And that's when the, what do you want to call them? What do we call those, TJ, these guys that, men in black that go around and do everything to try to shut you down or attack you? Anyway, that's kind of
we actually call them men in black. but there's government entities and the intelligence community, but then we have the deep state. So what happened is we have to discuss with the public all the various levels that if we say men in black, we don't necessarily know what part of the alphabet soup, as we say these days, because even the intelligence community has changed. But they weren't sharing a lot of information among each other. So it got to be a gray area, but then we had Homeland Security come in. We have the National Security Council, but, the ones with the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, and then we have all the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and basically everybody and everything, including the Department of Energy. So, who would you say? Depends on what story you're listening to and at what time frame. Because, to be honest with you, Ken, I don't know how you are, but it's after 9/11/2012, some people say, we could do a show on just what you and I and Tommy have lived through, but things changed after the Oklahoma bombing and 95. And then again in 2001, wasn't it 9/11? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, it
and
was.
It said that was, you could say it's a conspiracy theory, but there's talk of the other group of the government trying to change the people and the people that were in charge. So I think that you're referring to is the fact that there's a part of us on the globe that got too big for our britches and kept money under the table, so to speak, and used it in a different way to run our world politics and our banks and our governments. And so what happened in my explanation, and you can go back to it, is that the men in black could be either deep state with the ones that are very controlling and corrupt versus and you could call them the black hats, but people get mad at me when I do that, versus the white hats that were like you and me. We thought we signed a contract. We were government people. We were excited about going to the moon. We wanted to get there, and Kennedy. But, we get into all these deep thoughts that the men that learned how to use it to their advantage, would you say, and now people are taking it back to the secret space program and Hitler and the Vril and all of that. So we're trying to blend all this together. So back to you, Ken. What do you think the men in black are? But that's sort of what you're talking about, right? It got to be the good guys or the guys that signed on for good versus whether it was military, NASA, versus those that started learning how to use what they knew for their own advantage. And they all, inside all the different intelligence agencies, some people were thinking they knew everything, and yet others didn't know what was going on in the office next door. So if you will help us, we can decipher all that. But back to you. Where are you going with that?
Well,
that's where I went.
Actually, the part of it that I'm finding fascinating is how that had been so well kept secret for such a long time, and yet, and I'm sure there's many people kind of like myself that we were, our top secret clearances, and and we sat in on a few meetings and things. I even sat in on several meetings with Dr. Wernher von Braun before he passed away, and that's a terrible thing when you're 77. You're starting to look around, and most of the people you knew aren't here anymore. But I think what we're calling, a lot of people are calling it soft disclosure. Yet I've been preaching for the last year that this was going to be the year that going into full disclosure. And, of course, there's that branch of the governments and all trying to keep that quiet. And part of it goes back to why the governments have been afraid of going public with our direct contact with other intelligent lives throughout the universe, and that is the fear that people would panic, just like they did of the War of the Worlds radio thing back in the 1930s, 38 or something like that.